We have 7 individuals taking place in this panel. Welcome, everyone. Okay, so I'd like to introduce the members from left to right. Wendy Craig-Purcell. Gary Zukav. Raymond Moody. Joserra González. Domen Kočevar. Toku Takahashi. And Suzue Miuchi. To begin this session, Wendy, Gary, and Raymond will be sharing their poems to engage us in the theme, Harmony Between Body and Spirit.
It's an honor and a joy to be with you today, and as has been said by everyone that has preceded me, thank you so much for the invitation, for your graciousness, for your beautiful culture, and your amazing heart. It's an honor and a privilege to be here with you. Thank you. So I had an interesting experience when I met with Yuka and was told that this session would begin with a poem. And so I found myself really looking far and wide through all of the books of poetry that I have, not that I have a whole lot, but looking through them and scouring the internet and trying to find something that really spoke to me with regard to this topic that we're here to discuss, the balancing of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And I looked and looked for quite a number of weeks, and I couldn't find anything. I found beautiful pieces that had been written on the idea of the feminine energy, the goddess energy, the mother energy, and I found myself nodding and saying, yes, yes, that's beautiful. However, it's incomplete. And I didn't really look for the masculine energy poems, but I found that whatever I was looking for was incomplete. It didn't speak to what I understand, this spark of the divine to be, and what I understand is needed in the balancing of the divine feminine and the divine masculine. And that quiet little voice that I've learned to really pay attention to kept saying, that's because you're supposed to write it. I said, I don't think so. And the argument went on for a little while. And so I share with you something that is my best attempt at expressing what I think this idea of igniting the divine spark is all about. It was morphed a little bit here, in part because of something you said, Yuka, and in part because of something Preeta said. So it's been updated within the last 5 minutes. So I call it igniting the divine spark. Gender does not, must not, define the divine feminine nor the divine masculine. The divine feminine is not some kind of goddess woman, but rather a way of being and seeing, no less important, yet no more important than the divine masculine. The divine masculine is not some sort of superhero, but rather a way of being and seeing, no more important, yet no less important either than the divine feminine. The divine feminine, the divine masculine, each resides in you. Each resides in me. The divine feminine, intuitive, gentle, receptive, still, collaborative, creative, and yin. The divine masculine, analytical, strong, disciplined, active, assertive, logical, and yang. The divine feminine, the divine masculine, no longer pitted against each other, no longer torn apart. the wounded masculine healed, the buried feminine revealed, the divine feminine, the divine masculine, joined in sacred union, now dancing in holy rhythm, and in their perfect dancing, may peace prevail on earth. And so in the few minutes or minute that I have, it is my deepest heartfelt intention to be present to and to look within myself and around myself at how to bring forth that exquisite balance. To me, it is indeed the ultimate balancing act, beginning first with the balancing of the divine feminine and masculine within myself, modeling it as a mother, as a wife, as a minister, and a spiritual leader. And then also looking for how can I be in service to the expression of that exquisite and absolutely needed balance in all sectors, in government, in education, in science, as we begin to balance that in those sectors and bring forth the divine feminine and the divine masculine in equal exquisite balance, we will not have the problems that we see in the world today. Thank you.
I want to go back to something that Mrs. Saionji said at the beginning of our gathering here. She talked about prefixed ideas. I think this is very important to be aware of prefixed ideas because something has happened in the last few decades that have made almost every idea that we have prefixed. And a prefixed idea is a confinement. It's a prison. And so if we explore questions that are based on these prefixed ideas, we stay in the confinement. So what I want to suggest is that it is a good time now to explore beyond the prefixed ideas. And in order to do that, it's necessary to begin to identify them and how they came into being. I will suggest that an unprecedented transformation in human consciousness has occurred and is occurring full force. And it is expanding our perception beyond the limitations of the five senses, so that we now are beginning to see our lives, ourselves, our world, and the universe in entirely different ways. And old questions cannot begin to describe these. Our understanding of power has changed. Our understanding of who we are has changed. Our understanding of male and female, everything has changed. What could it be, this tremendous transformation in human consciousness that is happening at lightning speed from an evolutionary perspective? What would it feel like? What would it be like? So I have a poem. I can't sit and read this poem. It's written by the Spanish poet Juan Ramón Jiménez. And Juan Ramón says this: I am not I. I am this one, walking beside me, whom I do not see, whom at times I manage to visit, and whom at other times I forget, who remains calm and silent while I talk, and forgives gently when I hate, who walks where I am not, who will remain standing when I die. Thanks to this multi-sensory human, Juan Ramón Jiménez, he begins to show us what it's like to be in this new world, beyond prefixed ideas, where power is no longer the ability to manipulate and to control, but the alignment of ourselves, our personalities, the temporary vehicles we have between birth and death with the highest, most noble, immortal parts of ourselves. In the West, we call it a soul. You call it whatever fits you. But it is that part that longs for harmony, cooperation, sharing, and reverence for life, and creates it. So, Wendy and Steve started off by reminding us that we know that everything is non-dual. That we do. But how many of us experience it? That is beginning as hundreds of millions of us become multisensory. And in this new world of multisensory perception, everything is changing. A new male is replacing the old male. A new female is replacing the old female. The old male is fulfilled by providing and protecting. The old female is fulfilled by bearing and raising children. But both the new male and the new female are free now to pursue any direction that their interest and aptitudes take them. When I first began to write about this 30 years ago in The Seat of the Soul, I had to look around to see new males and new females. Now I have to be blind not to see them. Females who are heading countries and flying airplanes, who are doing construction work, who are attorneys, who are etc. You understand all that. Males who are tender, sensitive, intuitive. They care for the young, the sick, and you see that too. All of that is happening. And we can't balance male and female, masculine and feminine as though it were grains of rice. The issue is not balance. The issue is wholeness. And the question is, how do we attain wholeness? It's not by looking at ourselves as wounded. Every time I look at myself as wounded, I find that I've become a victim and someone else has become a villain. Power is now the alignment of the personality with the soul. So how can we say, how do love and power fit together? Love is power. Where love is, power is not. Where the ability and the will to manipulate and control is, love is not. And so I also accept Mrs. Saionji's suggestion that I not strive for answers right now, but to express in the best way I can the questions that are most relevant to me and, in my perception, relevant not only to us individually, but to all of our collectives.
First of all, thank you so much for having me here. I'm just truly honored. When I was a child, my primary interest was astronomy and Ms. Nanaka's interest of spaceflight as well, which was one of the great spiritual adventures of humankind, I think, is to fly out into space. But as life had it, I ended up having my adventures here on Earth instead. And specifically, since the 1960s, I've had the very great honor and privilege of being able to talk with thousands of people all over the world who came to the point of death and were revived and experienced transcendent consciousness. Whatever they were chasing before, power or money or fame or knowledge, as in my case, people who go through this experience come out of it telling us that the most important thing we can do while we're alive is to learn to love. I have often wished, as I've thought over the years, that everybody in the world could experience that sense of love and compassion and peace that people bring back to us from the other side or whatever it is, this transcendent consciousness. And as a physician, I have learned so much from my terminally ill patients. I had a conversation with Dr. Maki Kawamura last night about this, who is a hospice worker, and we were talking about how common it is that in the last few days or hours of life, that patients will talk unintelligibly or nonsensically. They will say things that don't make sense on the literal plane. And yet, when we talk with the families left behind, they reflect on this and they say that even though they understood that what their relatives were saying were nonsensical, that nonetheless it touched them very deeply. And so this brought to my mind a poem that I very much treasured when I was a child, and it's passed on through many generations, and it's a nonsense poem, but it is. One bright day in the middle of the night, two dead boys got up to fight. Back to back they faced each other, drew their swords and shot each other. A deaf policeman heard the noise and came and killed those two dead boys. I think in a way that is apropos to our world because, as you said, we are in a world of chaos. Things no longer make sense. And perhaps in a way we really have to face that and to explore the possibility that maybe not everything does make sense and that we need to have new ways of understanding, new rational ways of understanding the transcendent or apparently nonsensical things that our fellow human beings tell us when they return from the greatest of all adventures, being near death. People who are dying, I gather, are suspended between two realms of existence, between the apparent physical world that we're in and apparently some other realm of transcendent existence that does not depend on matter, but that is entirely involved with consciousness. There have been cases where very difficult problems, which had been intractable, have been solved by people who were in some sort of altered state of consciousness. Very famous example of this is that of Kekulé, the chemist who understood the structure of the benzene molecule being a ring from within a transcendent state of consciousness. He was basically in what we call the hypnagogic state and was able to see this. Our problems in the world are very difficult now, and I think never in our history has any generation been faced with such daunting problems. And I want to say that maybe the transcendent kinds of consciousness that are talked about by people who almost die, or who by very creative people, that perhaps these are part of the key to solving these things. So thank you.
Thank you. My name is Joserra, and I'm going to try to talk from the heart. I'm not a theorist, so I don't know very much to articulate concepts, but I'm going to try to speak from my own little experience because I am quite young. First, I'm very grateful to the Saionji family and the Japanese family because I really feel your spirit and your intention is so, just the way you are listening to all of us, Masami, it's amazing to see. So thank you so much for the invitation. And we are already working together for peace in the world. I've been living 2 years in the Gandhi ashram in India. Many of us have been mentioning Mahatma Gandhi. And it's a joy to listen to his stories. I think one of the questions that many people working in activism are facing, maybe it's more connected to the other theme of inner and outer world, but I think this is, I'm not an expert in body and spirit, but I think it's very much connected also to this which is, should we go, what Preeta was saying, should we go more into our own work, which is more the work of the spirit of consciousness, or should we be active and put our body in action in the world? And Vinoba Bhave, which was a very good friend of Mahatma Gandhi, he was his student actually, and he was having this question, and he was thinking to go to the Himalayas just to meditate. But then he decided to, when he learned about Gandhi, about Gandhi's work, he decided to go to this Gandhi ashram where he was living, and try to have this engaged spirituality and be in the midst of all the political and social problems working. So I'm exploring that those edges, because I have been meditating for example, in a meditation center for 7 months, just focusing on my own transformation. But at the same time, I feel a pull to really, whatever we gain or whatever I gain through that inner work, to put it out in the world. So that has been a very interesting duality to explore. And concerning the body and the spirit, I had another thing to share, which, well, maybe two. One is how the outer, like what we do with our actions, how it affects the inner world. Like, for example, when I came 2 days ago and I saw all these beautiful gardens that you have here in Japan, all over the place. This morning I was walking out of the hotel, and everywhere almost you can see these super beautiful gardens, and with so much care, so much love. And in many spaces in India, for example, also with our Move by Love community, we know the power of container, like the container, the beauty we create outside, how that helps also to ignite our spirit and our inner beauty. So that was one reflection. And another reflection I want to make is how maybe the spirit-body duality, we cannot use it too much in Europe because people don't connect so much with the word spirit, or we say, yeah, spirit. But maybe Gandhi talked about this also, the 3 edges. So the head, heart, and hands. And I think for many years we have been unbalanced in that sense. In all the fields, in education, we are so much in the head, but we don't have almost, heart now is changing slowly, but we don't have like that emotional work. We don't have circles where the kids can express and talk to each other, for example. Also, we lack a lot the hand part, where the kids can engage into creating, into creativity, into farming, for example, into some kind of hand labor. And I think the same happens with the workplace, with working areas where maybe we have a lot of intellectual, sometimes not even that. I think sometimes many people are only working for the hands. They are only working with the hands. But they don't have the chance, for example, to engage with thinking too much. Or they don't have the chance to engage with sharing their feelings. So that's one question maybe for us, because we all are leaders in the world in different ways. How can we compensate? How can we find balance between the 3 edges, the head, the heart, and the hands? And I think in all fields we have a lot of experiments to do in that sense. And I hope I can participate in many experiments with all of you. I'm here at your service. So thank you for the invitation, and yeah, we'll enjoy this journey together. Thank you.
Hello, also from my side. Like all before me, I'm also very grateful and humble for being in the field of such dedicated, pure and courageous family that is so much more, and friends, the workers, for the good in the world that we are here gathered. Yes, I used also 2 poems, and both of them will be from the Kabir, the saint from, I think, 16th century. And first one is a very short one. I burn mine own house down. The torch is in my hand. Now I'll burn down the house of anyone who wants to follow me. And so it is for sure a poem to meditate upon it, but I think someone was mentioning before, it's like the world it's now for sure like they were, life is trying to burn some old things down and trying to motivate us for finding something new, but I'll go fastly through what I wrote. Body and spirit, being a body in the spirit and spirit in the body. And for sure, first step is for sure the awakening of the knowing of the spirit in the body and looking upwards. But when the spirit becomes so strong that the polarization turn around, then we suddenly know and are spirit beings in the body, these divine sparks. And then our house is burned down and we change very fundamentally. But we do not truly want that because it means mostly from our personality eyes to saw, to cut down the branch on which we do sit on. And it is against any survival logic to do that. And that is the problem mostly of not youth. Why? Because I'm thinking a lot about that, so I'm sharing my thoughts on that, and really in humble manner, like Joserra, that we're young and on the beginning of our journey. I see really this, they're mentioning economical totalitarianism, that everything around us is really motivated with just one reason, and that is to get the money from each other. And in this trying, we as humanity did go across many borders that we shouldn't, as they are acts against the good of the other, good for the other. And that it's the food industry, the poisons, the weapon industry, movie, media, politics, education. And almost all of that has a goal of getting something from somebody on the expense of the other. And now the question is, do we dare to stand for what we believe, even if it will take away our lifestyle, our lower our income, our reputation, our friends, and I'm including myself, of course, in that. And I've seen so much of us, good people doing good, but being so careful not to lose. And it is the same with many organizations in the world, and they're doing so much good, but I think it's really demanding years and ahead of us, that it's really, that it's needed, not just doing 20% for the good and 80% for being careful not to lose. But it's so natural, but it's not enough, I think, for the time in which we are now. And that is why our future is in youth, and as they are not yet being caught in the, on the branches that they don't want to sow afterwards. And that's why I respect very much the work of Nina and the Children of the Earth, to stand with youth without defining them, because that's the challenge, and letting them their message. But industry, that we are accomplices in this system, of course, is really being faster and better to catch the higher and higher evolved youth before awakening. And that's the challenge, because for sure the youth are going well prepared, but everything what we built is also being so fast. So, and now comes the twist. Wouldn't it be great if we could make an industry out of sincere caring for the other, that we would get paid to find the ways how to connect with the other, how to make money out of being good to others. It's an interesting twist, so we can think, because it's not destroying the system, but turning around. And the other point is how to clear the path to the divine spark in everyone. And I truly believe that there was never before such thin layer to our divine sparks, through being in the interconnectedness. And because of the work of so many around the world as you are, really thin layer, maybe it doesn't look, but it's really near. And that's why identification with the other is possible, and it is the key to the better world. And the average level of the humanity consciousness is much higher than it was before, and ability to see the other is much, much easier. With the internet, we got the global mind, and we can know it all if we want, and now we only need a global heart, and it is so near. That's also something that Nina likes to say. And since we are doing a project in Auschwitz, I heard that Rudolf Hess, which was the director of that horrible place, was questioned on the trial that if he never thought about that, feeling it, and he said, never until once I saw the children and the wife and women, and then I connected that with my children and white women. And how to connect the dots that we would clearly know what our actions are doing to the other. And I can say 2 days ago, it was Vesak, the festival of Buddha, full moon in Taurus. I don't know if you know, but it's the yearly esoteric festival, gathering of the great ones and disciples around the world and people of goodwill. And it's time of impressions, so it's the esoteric story that impressions from above to the world servers come for the year ahead of us. So it's a great timing for the meeting that we're having. And it's also one thing, in last 2 years, I'm really coming, so I really feel, and I think I'm not alone, that until the year 2025, it's really important time, or we're going left or right, and it's really such time when it is possible that humanity can reach this minimal level of interconnectedness, when we will at least stop doing the harm to the other. And now I will end with a poem that symbolizes the ability to see beyond the present logic of the world, and it's connected to also Dr. Moody's song, and it is again from Kabir, and it's really mind-boggling. Brother, I've seen some astonishing sights. A lion keeping watch over pasturing cows, a mother delivered after her son was, a guru prostrated before his disciple, a fish spawning on treetops, a cat carrying away a dog, a gunny sack driving a bullock cart, a buffalo going out to graze sitting on a horse, a tree with its branches in the earth, its roots in the sky, a tree with flowering roots. This verse, says Kabir, is your key to the universe. If you can figure it out, that's it. And I believe really the future needs a different solutions, really, that we can find it, and we will open and support from the elders, the youth. Thank you for listening.
Toku Takahashi. Sorry, I'll talk in Japanese, so please use this device. Are you guys ready? はじめまして。私は関西の病院で
Thank you very much for this opportunity. After I practiced digestive surgery in a hospital in the western part of Japan, I went to the United States in 1992, and I worked at Michigan University and Duke University. Now I am working at the Wisconsin University of Medicine. Are humans physical or spiritual, or both? So human is made of soul and body, and what connects the both is something called chi or prana or aura. And from a quantum mechanics point of view, the difference among body, soul, and chi is the frequency. For example, visible lights have frequencies of between 400 and 800 terahertz, and the lights with a higher frequency is called the ultraviolet ray, and lower frequency infrared. Soul consists of frequencies much higher than the visible light. Therefore, we may not be able to see it, but it doesn't mean a soul doesn't exist. After the body perish, the soul lives forever, and when it finds a new body, the soul goes into that body and experiences a new life, and this is called the reincarnation or a transmigration of the soul. And there are many reports on this, and there is no doubt that this exists. So why do we exist on the earth? To evolve towards the ultimate goal. And we need to experience many things through our physical body in order to reach the ultimate goal. And the essence of life is the soul that keeps aiming to go higher to reach the ultimate goal of evolution. And for the evolution of soul, devotion or piety is important. That is what many saints said. But what do you mean by devotion or piety? My main research theme is physiological effect of oxytocin. Oxytocin is one of neurohormones which is produced by hypothalamus. And oxytocin has to do with breastfeeding and labor, and it can reduce the negative impact on body, for example, stress reactions. And because of oxytocin, we have this feelings of compassion and trust for others. When there is a positive and active interactions with others, oxytocin is generated more or secreted more. And oxytocin has to do with sociability of people. The 14th Dalai Lama said, "Love and compassion for others connect us and let us create a community. And love and compassion leads to care, the sense of caring for others. And love and compassion derives from biological factor." According to our recent research results, the biological factor that creates love and compassion can be oxytocin. To be affectionate to others and to be compassionate for others it has something to do with oxytocin. So in order to evolve our souls, devotion is important. In other words, altruism. And in our body, we have genes of altruism or altruistic genes. By stimulating this oxytocin genes, our souls can keep evolving to be affectionate and compassionate for others, and to try to become better self today than yesterday. By doing so, we can keep going higher to the level of something very sacred. Thank you very much.
みゆきさん、ちょっといいです。Introduce Ms. Suzue Miuchi at the beginning, so I'd like to introduce a little bit about her. She is a best-selling cartoonist, and one of the most famous cartoon she wrote was named Grass Mask, which was sold 50 million copies in Japan. Thank you.
Suzue Miuchi, thank you for the kind introduction, and thank you very much for organizing this symposium, and I'd like to thank the Saionji family. Thank you very much once again. So I've been listening to all the speeches, and I thought that I would be comfortable in sharing my stories with everybody here, because I've experienced a lot of mystical experiences. And at 4 years old, my body got separated from my spirit, and I just recovered the memory from the previous life. It was a white male who died in his 70s, and he was a novelist. That is my former life, and that's why I'm drawing the cartoons now, probably. And so the spirit and reincarnation, and that resides in me, is something that I've experienced in person. And there's near-death experience that was mentioned. And actually, in February last year, my husband collapsed, and his heart and lung stopped, and he died for once. And then for 3 weeks he was unconscious, but then he came back, and he just said that me here, why? So he was saying that he was not aware why he collapsed, And so I told him that it's been 3 weeks since he collapsed, and I wanted him to talk more. So I said, dear honey, you passed away for 3 minutes, and probably did you meet your parents in heaven? And he said, yes. So I was surprised, and I asked once again, did you really meet them? And he said yes, with a deep nod. And there are many things that I can share with you, but I could go on forever, so I would like to stop here. Including all the experiences I've had since I was a child, I really think that people are spiritual, and because of that the spirituality, people can live on. And there's something that I noticed. Then on this face of the earth, isn't there any spirituality? Because I believe that the earth is the form of life, and we were allowed to live on the face of the earth. So maybe we human beings are the bacteria that are residing in the human being's body. We were just maybe we're not aware that we are inside of the huge form of life called Earth. And it was more than 30 years ago. I just would like to read this out that I've written. It was when I was traveling to Kurama Mountain in north of Kyoto, doubling as a business trip to report on comic books, and there was a strange legend there. 6.5 million years ago, a spiritual king came down from Venus to this mountain, and that king has been shrined as God in this Kurama Mountain. And in this legend, that God seems to be an eternal good-looking boy who in his appearance was 16 years old, and I was attracted to the fact that there's a good-looking eternal good-looking boy, and I wanted to meet him and describe him in my comic. And I went there, and in the middle of the mountain there's a temple, and that God is enshrined there. And they were praying for peace of the earth, not the world peace, not people, the peace of the people, but peace for the earth. And they were not using the Buddhist scriptures, but they were using plain language. And they were praying for peace for everything on the earth. And I was surprised and I was moved. And I bought a book on Kurama Mountain there. And I went up to the top of the mountain where there's a place called Okunoin, where the god is enshrined at the innermost part of the temple. And it was a spring, shiny, sunny day in May. And the god of Kurama Mountain, has been enshrined. And I was reading the book that was about Kurama Mountain. And then I was beginning to feel very, very pleasant. And it was for the first time since I was born, that I felt that I was getting lighter and lighter. And I just wondering what's happening. And I looked up, and it was the first experience. And what happened was that all the roots of the trees, soil, rocks, grass, from everywhere on the surface of the ground, there was a white or transparent-looking whirlpools, something like vortex, was coming out and splashing out from the ground, from the bottom of the ground, like a pillar, and they were disappearing into the sky. And now those whirlpools were coming out from everywhere on the ground. And I was so surprised, and I was wondering what it was. And I didn't know what it was, but from the bottom of the ground, the energy, the whirlpools of energy was coming out and disappearing into the sky. I don't know if they are not existent anymore. They may be just invisible. But I felt that I was quite comfortable, and I felt quite lighter. Those vortex or whirlpools something that makes people or living creatures feel comfortable. In the book that I was reading, it said that in Kurama Mountain, there are so many different types of living creatures on the Kurama Mountain. And I just noticed that this may be because of this vortex from the earth. There could be some energy that could nurture living creatures, and that may be splashing out and spewing out. And maybe there are places like this in various parts of the earth. And I just noticed that there are so many things that are full of vortex. At the top of my head, our head, if you look at the hair, there are vortex or whirls. Is it dextral or sinistral? Spinning to the right or spinning to the left? Why do we have this whirls on top of the head? When the baby is in the womb of the mother, from the lower back to the head, there is a spiral that is being formed, and then it stops at the head of the top of the head, and that's why we all have these whirls. And Westerners tend to have the dextral, but for Japanese, mostly sinistral. But there are some people who do have both dextral and sinistral whirls. I'm sorry, I'm deviating from my main topic, but it's you can find vortex on the feet or the fingers of the hands called fingerprints, and there's also cochlea in the back of the ear, and there's also spiral helix in the DNA, and the baby comes out of the mother's stomach drawing a shape of a spiral. So mother gives birth by vortex power, and typhoons and tornadoes swirl around, and galaxies seem to form clusters as they move and swirl around as they move, to me at least. That's how it seems. So everything on the earth is made or enabled to live with the energy of vortex. And dances in ancient times is a dedication to God, and its origin is what we call mai in Japanese. And I believe that mai originally comes from the practice of shrine maidens dancing while turning around, feeding the spirit of God. And in Turkish dance called melavuna, they simply keep spiraling around and wind up in a status of trance and being connected with God. Perhaps in the ancient times, many people used to feel the life-nurturing whirlpools of the energy that are flowing out from the bottom of the earth. And after my experience at Kurama Mountain, I have visited over 5,000 sacred places and shrines in Japan. And at several of those places, I felt the energy of the vortex from the earth. And the moment I closed my eyes to pray, I felt as if my body was rotating. And that was probably because there are many places where the energy that nurtures life was gushing out from the bottom of the earth. And so they were important sacred places. And if you look more closely, they are full of beautiful greens, like green forests and grass. So they are exactly the places where the spirit of Earth Goddess or Mother Gaia gushes out from in the form of love. So in the temple of Kurama Mountain, what is it that is being enshrined? Apparently, it is not the legendary eternal good-looking boy. And then when you read the book on the table, the honzon, or the principal image of the temple, is called sonten, respectful life. And this is a cosmic life and cosmic energy that is producing everything that exists in the world, including humans, an oversoul of the universe, and the great light of grace emanating from Buddha. And there's one passage that I found in that book, so let me read this out. And that is called Ring of Life. This is a rotation, the ring of life. Respect nature, be grateful to nature, live with nature, listen to nature's teachings, find the same life as one has in nature. The rings of life in which plants and birds, insects and fungi, the bacteria and stones are all living together, dedicated to each other, helping each other, ingesting from each other, disappearing from each other, in this ring of great nature, are we enabled to live? The great power, the great work, it is the oversoul of the universe Sonten. Along with all forms of life, we are enabled to live by the great work of Sonten. Thank you. Thank you very much for your attention.
We thank the members of our panelists for session 2, and we invite Mrs. Saionji for short words of reflection.
時間がなかった. Oh, we didn't have time, but it was splendid. This wisdom from all of you. We were able to experience something that I didn't experience for all of us. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. And thank you for experiencing all those things. And that's all. I'm just looking forward to listening to you more and more.
Reflection, if you can take out your blue cards, reflection cards, session 2 for your reflections on body and spirit session. So we'll give you just a few minutes to complete this before we go for lunch break. And we'd like to thank our panelists before they leave the presentation table. Thank you, Wendy, Gary, Joserra, Dominic, Brian, Taku, and Suzue. Thank you very much. And now, if we can bring the moment of reflection to a close, if you can pass your cards down to the end of your row, and volunteers will be picking up your reflection cards for those sitting in the center table, presentation table. So before we conclude our morning program and break for lunch, I'd like to take this time to invite Alan Briskin to summarize our morning program and session. So please welcome Alan.
When you have a very full meal, sometimes it's helpful to have a little ginger between courses. So think of me as ginger. This is not at all a summary. It's a invitation to realize the extraordinary morning that we've had and to prepare ourselves for this afternoon. Stephen began early on saying that these were difficult questions. And I wanted to share that I don't believe all questions need to be answered. They are meant to make us wiser together. They're meant to call forth what's deepest within ourselves. And so I feel what we witnessed today was really quite extraordinary, of people calling forth what was deepest within themselves so that we could be wiser together. Mr. Muratas quoted saying, "We think too much and feel too little." And so I wanted to share what the feeling is of listening. And speaking for myself, but also as a question, can we listen with reverence? Can we listen with curiosity? Can we listen with a feeling of beauty, the beauty of the divine spark revealing itself? Can we listen with a playful ear for enlightenment and nonsense? And by nonsense, I mean those things we can't initially understand. Things that don't initially make sense. Opposites appear to us in ways that we can't fully grasp. And so this morning was really experiencing how can we move toward harmony of things that may at first appear irreconcilable. I knew from the beginning, even before the morning began, that there could not be words to fully describe what this morning. And so I was gifted by an email with a quote that reflected just those feelings. And the quote is from someone who was already evoked this morning, and that is the scientist and theologian Teilhard de Chardin. And he said this, and I thought that why this quote was sent to me, I can't really explain, but I felt it was in service of our being here this morning. And this is his words. "There is almost a sensual longing for communion with others who have a large vision." There is almost a sensual longing for communion with others who have a large vision. The immense fulfillment of the friendship between those engaged in furthering the evolution of consciousness has a quality impossible to describe. We are blessed this morning in that we don't have to describe it because we are here living it, being here together. And to go forward into lunch with that same sense of gratitude for each other and that same sense of being able to see the divine spark in each other and to call it out from each other. And then to come back refreshed and be surprised again. Thank you.